Good morning, everyone. We're convening the Committee on Labor and Government Operations and the Committee on Education to hear a number of bills today. It is Thursday, February 8th, 2024 at 10 o'clock a.m. In conference room 309. Just a reminder to the testifiers, we do have a 2-minute testimony limit, so if you do reach that limit, I'm going to ask you to start to conclude your testimony. If you go on too long, we'll cut you off. All right, first up on the agenda, oh, did you need to do a thing? I never know about the, okay. We're good. Yes. These joints are always weird. All right, first up on the agenda, we have HB 1827 relating to healthcare workforce development. First up, we've got the Hawaii State Council on Developmental Disabilities in support.
I don't know. Do you want me to go?
Okay, I guess they're not here. Next up, we have DLIR in support.
Good morning, Chairs Matayoshi, Woodson, Vice Chairs Garrett, and Lachika. I'm Maricar Pilotin-Freitas of the Workforce Development Division. We are in support of this measure, but we'd also like to note that the department is working closely with all the stakeholders for more specific details on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Department of Education in support.
Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. Tammy Chun, Deputy Superintendent, standing on a written testimony in support.
All right, thank you. Next up, HSTA in support.
Aloha, chairs and vice chairs. Laverne Moore speaking on behalf of Osa Tui, President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. The HST supports House Bill 1827, which appropriates money to renovate and equip certain public high school classrooms to be used for healthcare training. Our students need the hands-on experience that they will need when they go out to the workforce. With Hawaii and its aging population, the workers need those to be there to care for them. So the Hawaii State Teachers Association asks your support for this bill to support our students in the classroom who wants to be future healthcare workers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Healthcare Association of Hawaii in support.
Thank you, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify in strong support of this measure. Since 2018, HEH and its members have been working on a healthcare workforce initiative with public high schools, community colleges, and universities to better match supply and demand of a healthcare workforce. Our programs up to this point have been largely funded through federal and private sources. Over the past few years, we've been able to rigorously test various models as we work to attract more students into the healthcare workforce, retain workers we already have, and provide opportunities for career development. The programs in HB 1827 will provide the resources to further expand and strengthen the healthcare workforce in the state. We ask for your support of this measure, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay, if not, members, any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yep, Chair.
Thank you. For HAH, please. Thank you for being here. You know, I really love this proposal. Can you just briefly talk a little bit about how operationally the student would receive a certification in high school?
Sorry, can you just repeat the question, sorry?
Per the certification process that
Right.
you have for the high school students, if you can explain a little bit as to how that, how you've done that in the recent past and how you plan on expanding it, if that isn't
So
back
we
the
work,
intention.
yeah, we're working with a number of different organizations in the state, including our community colleges and our healthcare partners. And so in the high schools, in a number of our high schools, these students, while they're actually in high school and working in these programs, can get certifications for different types of certifications, including phlebotomy, medical assistant, CNAs. So when they graduate from high school, they can go straight out into the workforce. Now, we're also, community colleges, there are other organizations that also have some of these programs, but our goal is to attract, there's only 50% of the students in our public high schools who graduate who go on to tertiary education in the immediate future. There's a large pool of these workers who we are looking to provide opportunities to get into healthcare. There are multiple opportunities once they've got that initial certification to then go on to further, either an associate degree, a baccalaureate degree, or a master's degree over time. So this is just the starting, jumping off point for a potential lifelong career in healthcare.
And how many schools are you working with currently? You have like a rough estimate, or like, are you working
many?
on all islands?
13. So we have 13 schools we're directly involved with. There are 47 public high schools in the state. There are health programs in 38 of those public high schools. And our goal is to expand. So we're working across the state. We were in Hawaii, island of Hawaii, for example, 2 weeks ago, looking at 2 of the public high schools over there. So this is a statewide program. And our goal is to expand what we are doing.
For that secondary component, do you have any programs on Maui?
Yes, we do.
What about Kauai?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we're currently on all islands, all the major islands, at least Oahu, Kauai, Maui, and the island of Hawaii.
And either for you or maybe for DOE, if you could speak about it, can you explain how the upgrades of the DOE classrooms would look? I'm thinking about Waipahu High School, how some of their technology is incorporated to help improve educational delivery, but if you have an idea as to what that would appear to the students.
Yeah, I wish we could share a picture with you, and we're happy to share a picture. We have a vision for what our classrooms should look like. Our goal is to renovate as many of these classrooms as possible to create a dynamic, high-tech, modern learning experience for the students that's exciting for the teachers as well, that's attractive for the parents when they come in and they look at where their children are getting education. So we're working with the designer to come up with the design for all of these programs, and we'll upgrade these classrooms as we can. We are working with multiple funding sources. We're not just looking to the state. We have received material federal dollars. We're working with philanthropic organizations, and we're also working with our members to support this project across the state.
And you're working with the principals, I assume?
Yes, we're working with the principals. We're working with the Department of Education, Keith Hayashi and his team. So yeah, we're working with all of the partners involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Okay. Okay, let's move on to HB 2397 relating to Department of Education procurement. First up, we have DOE in support.
Aloha, Chair Matayoshi, Chair Woodson, committee members, Brian Hallett, Assistant Superintendent for the Department of Education. The department stands on its written testimony and support, and just add that career and technical education, they're looking for teaching tools, and it can take a long time to get delivery. The procurement process can add to that, especially with the potential for protests. So this measure is intended this administration bill is intended to allow for more timely and less cumbersome procurements for CTE equipment to support classroom activities.
Okay, thank you. Next up, SPO with comments.
Good morning, Chairs, Vice Chairs, Bonnie Kakui for the State Procurement Office. We will stand on our written testimony. I do want to make a point of clarification that the SPO and DOE did meet to work out some of this language with the exception of the provisions. That was added later we thought was necessary to provide accountability and transparency. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions?
Quick question for SPO, please.
Yep, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator, for being here. Greatly appreciate it. And so is the Procurement Office still working on establishing a e-procurement system for SPO?
Yes, we are. We are working on our new e-procurement system, and we've branded it Aloha eBuys. That will take a little while. It was a non-funded initiative, and so we're working through that. We've just actually started. We signed the contract just in November of 2023, and we're working through that entire implementation plan, starting with the e-marketplace, and then doing the e-procurement or the sourcing portion of that.
Okay, thank you for that. And so your testimony indicates that you recommend that the department also use a publicly accessible e-system. Do you mean the system that you are building right now? Because it would be, I think, very strenuous for the Department of Education to stand up another additional system, train workers, and spend millions of dollars to do so if they're going to switch over to yours ultimately anyway.
We currently have an e-procurement system, a legacy system which we built called HyPro, in which solicitations are done. But we have another system called HANDS, Hawaii Awards and Notices database system, in which you're just posting. You post awards notices that don't require solicitation. You're posting CPO requests. So I don't think it'll be a big stretch for the DOE to be included in our system right now, in the HANDS system. It's just a matter of having access to HANDS and filling out the information.
So your recommendation was not for the DOE to stand up their own system?
No, I'm not recommending that they stand up their own system. If they have their own system, that would be great. If not, they're welcome to use HANDS.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Members, any other questions? Okay, DOE, I just want to clarify because I think I want to make sure that the public system, or well, first of all, I want to verify with you that you agree with SPO's amendments in their testimony. They said that you did. I just want to.
Well, I
wanna
think
make sure.
is noted in comments, there wasn't really agreement on those amendments. The provisions.
Oh, I thought you. So the provisions that SPO is providing or suggesting in its testimony, it says the SPO and the Department of Education met and agreed to language that is acceptable to both parties.
I think that
Is
was
that not
based on an
the-
earlier draft or some earlier.
Okay.
Yes, just to, as I was trying to point out, just to clarify, we did come up with some of this language in section L. The additional language after provided that was added later for clarity, and that was done on SBO's
Okay,
recommendation.
so everything after provided that, or
Yes.
including provided that, everything after that too is all SPO's
Yes.
sole recommendation.
Yes.
But the previous, the amendment suggested prior to that in subsection L are in, both of you are in agreement, which seems pretty minor,
I think there's
honestly.
I think we switched around a couple of words, but
Yeah,
we're essentially the same
Okay.
context.
Okay. Huh. So for DO, was that? So you folks have a procurement system that you run right now, right? Don't you folks have an internal one?
Yes.
Okay, is it publicly accessible?
I think I'll let our procurement director speak to this.
Okay.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Lois Mel. Thank you for the question. We actually use for our office for goods and services, we actually use HyPro for some of the solicitations, and then our office uses HANDS for the ones that are not on SPO's HyPro.
Okay. I don't know if you have the SPO's testimony, but they would like you to, they're suggesting an amendment that would require you to, for awards over 2,500, to be posted on a publicly accessible electronic system. Does your system meet that qualification? Or would you have to use HyPro then?
Yeah, because we don't have our own, we would use HANDS,
Okay.
the other side, the one that just posts notices. We would have to use HANDS to meet that requirement.
Okay.
So if I could add to that, we are committed to accountability and transparency, and we are committed to working on getting this publicly posted. I would suggest that putting it in statute is not required or should not be required. When we look at all the other exemptions in this section of statute, there aren't additional requirements. But this is something that we will be working on, and I would ask for the flexibility to do that, and then you hold us
Okay.
accountable that we follow through.
So one of my concerns about this bill is that career and technical education devices, they can be very expensive. So that makes me a little nervous. I mean, it's not like we're giving you a procurement exemption for, well, textbooks can also be, but, for pens and pencils. These are for very expensive machines. Granted, there may not be a ton of vendors for it, so maybe that's why you want this exemption. But is there a reasonable cap we could put monetarily to allow you the flexibility, but not maybe take off the fear of fraud?
So I think, when I look at the rest of the procurement exemptions, and for example, the one for research materials and books and maps, there is no such cap. I think that's what the exemption is about.
Understandably.
So, understanding it, could there be additional reporting requirements associated with purchases over a certain threshold? Perhaps that's something that could be explored. But to set an arbitrary cap, that's one of the challenges where there's a $25,000 cap. What's the basis of that?
I'm asking you to set the arbitrary cap.
Why is it, it's been
What do you think is
decades, or it's been
reasonable?
a long time since that's been adjusted. So
Yeah.
coming up with a magical number, I think is part of the dilemma here. So I
What
don't
would be
think
your
we-
magical number?
Well, given that, for example, I think just, the anatomy tables can be over $100,000 a piece, right there, and you're exactly right. There's limited manufacturers, there's limited distributors. The challenge of getting 3 quotes could be an impediment, for example. I would rather not put forth a arbitrary
I understand you would
number.
rather not, but I'm asking you to do that anyway. And if you don't have one, then we can set one, but it's going to be very arbitrary then.
It would probably be as arbitrary as my coming up with a number on the spot here.
Okay.
It's something that perhaps we could continue to have conversation
But you
on.
understand the fear. I mean, $100,000 a table, that's a big purchase. So when we take that out of procurement,
I guess I would put forth that we have a $2 billion budget and we're entrusted to spend that wisely. Procurement is about getting good cost and fair competition. I don't know that the cap is essentially aligned with those underlying objectives of fair cost and good competition. If it's a cap for a cap's sake about controlling spending, I think that's something separate and apart from what procurement law is for, or at least that's.
yeah, I think you might be conflating the two, though. And I'm not sure the $2 billion number is a fair benchmark, since that's the entire budget of the DOE, too.
Yeah,
It's
no,
not just for
I wouldn't
procurement.
suggest that be the cap.
Okay.
For sure.
Well, anyway, I think we got what we needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Quick question.
Yep, Chair.
CFO, if you can come back up. And so, just to attempt to try to aggregate more understanding, and so you said that the tables cost $100,000. Is there any other big-ticket items that you're seeing repetitively that schools are wanting to purchase?
Not yet. I would let others maybe come up and speak.
That's a hard
but I would
question
say
because
we're
you
at
might not be
we're
aware.
at the beginnings of building out the workforce program. There are things like flight simulators and probably potentially bigger ticket items than $106,000 anatomy table. But go ahead.
Sometimes the exemption is helpful when the items themselves are not of super high value, but then multiple schools are trying to purchase the same item, or a single school is trying to purchase more than one. It starts to exceed the existing threshold. So I think we'd have to get back to you with more examples and specifics of particular items that have been purchased, but just to let you know, there's both situations: single items that are very expensive or quite costly, and then multiple, when schools are purchasing multiples.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
SPO? So let's say they want to buy a $100,000 table or a $200,000 flight simulator, which is a lot. How difficult is that going to be for them if we don't give them this exemption and there are, say, only 2 vendors out there?
If you don't statutorily give them the exemption, they can still go to their CPO and ask for the exemption, but their claim is that that's a lengthy process as well. The schools have to go to, I'm not sure what their routing is, but it eventually has to go to their CPO and then get back down again.
Is that an internal process within DOE?
That's an internal process.
Okay, so they have no one to blame but themselves if it's slow? Is that what I'm getting?
Again, I'm not sure what their processes are. That's what they've said in previous testimonies, that the process is lengthy. But even if they do put it out for procurement, and if they don't get responses, or when they get one response, and there is a provision in the rules and the statutes that's allow you to award to the single sole offerer.
Okay. And I'm also assuming that these, I don't know if you have, I know it's internal with DOE, I don't know if you have any data on this, but I'm assuming these large purchases, even for CTE purposes, are not frequent. Is that fair?
I would think not. We did just a quick Google search about these anatomy tables, and they're extremely expensive. We found one that was $3 million. So I'm sure it's
Don't buy that
probably a
one.
very high-tech one that the hospitals may use, but I don't know what the DOE's requirements are on that. But
Okay, thank you.
A quick question, SPO. SPO, please. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
You threw out the figure though, $3 million. You're not assuming that the school is going to purchase a $3 million.
oh no,
Piece of equipment.
we don't know what kind of equipment it is. We just saw that they needed a table. We looked it up, Googled it, and said, "Oh, this is a $3 million table that can do all kinds of, cellular level things."
Do you know how many of these types of equipments need to be sole source? Because I assume it's a very small niche.
I don't have that information, no.
Okay. Is this an admin bill? Do you know if this is an admin bill? This is admin bill. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think I got what I needed. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. HB 2400, relating to education. First up, we have Hawaii Teacher Standards Board with comments.
You made the mistake also.
Slightly different, yeah.
I'm still doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. Mitzi Higa, speaking for the Hawaii Teacher Standards Board, and I made that mistake too, so don't feel bad. Speaking on behalf of the Standards Board, we have no problem with what this bill is trying to do. We do have a process in place that can revoke a license if there is sexual assault, sexual harassment, or physical abuse of a student. But the problem we have is that it says pendency of an investigation. That means we don't have the final results yet. So that is where we say, we put in an amendment that you may want to consider, that the Senate did consider, that HTSB would recommend that this bill contains an additional language that in the event that an individual retires or resigns from teaching prior to the completion of investigation, the individual must surrender his or her license. Because at the end of an investigation, we will get results and licenses are revoked. The problem being if they resign or retire prior to the end of the investigation. We want the investigation finished. We want it to be completed because to prevent matters of legal and prevent lawsuits. We want to make sure that we do have the evidence to prove that it's not just an allegation, it's proof, right? And so that's why we say if they do retire or resign prior to the end of investigation, one, we want the investigation finished anyway, but two, they can surrender their license. So that is our solution. Hopefully it helps.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Education in support.
Morning, Ken Kakisak with the Department of Education. We are standing in support of this measure. It is an administrative package bill. Did want to just address some of the comments I think that was raised by the previous speaker as far as why we are pursuing this. And one of the things we do want to mention, we understand, but we think if we're upfront with the individual to let them know at the beginning that if they decide to resign or retire as this investigation is ongoing, that their license will be revoked. So if this in statute is very clear for the individual as they're going through the process, that if they do decide they want to resign or retire, it is very clear that their license will be revoked at that time. And we do think that would deal with some of that confusion or if there's going to be lawsuits that might come after. So as long as that's clear up front, I think that might cover that. But again, we are open to have more discussion. That's just the thoughts we would have. But thank you for the opportunity to present testimony.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Yeah, Vice Chair.
NTSB, please. Morning,
Yes.
Ms. Higa. It seems like your testimony, you're really concerned about this from a due process standpoint. Can you explain, for my edification more than anything, what the process is when an allegation is made against a teacher? Are they immediately put on paid admin leave while the investigation is ongoing?
Okay, that is the DOE that does that. They do the investigations as well, but that's my understanding, but you might want to ask them.
Okay, DOE, please. Same question.
Thank you. So we do have our Office of Talent Management, some of our individuals, but I can say, yes, I believe they are put immediately on to leave if that allegation is put forward. Is that proper? But yeah, if not, we can get back to you with more of the questions. I don't know if that correct? Sorry, so many.
If you could add whether their license is suspended at all, if anything happens to their license during this time as well.
No, nothing happens to their license during the investigation, and whether they go on leave depends on the nature of the allegation.
What is the criteria for that?
I have to get back to you on specifically what the criteria is, but it usually has to depend on whether or not the nature of the charge is related to usually safety. So it just depends on whether or not they can continue in their duty. There might be an investigation and someone might be on leave or not on leave depending on the nature of the charge and the allegation and and how it relates to their job.
Okay, and they would be put on administrative leave, so they'd be paid during the course of the investigation, not leave without pay.
They may be put on administrative leave, correct?
Okay.
And if they are on administrative leave, they are paid.
Thank you very much. Thank you, chairs.
Members, any other questions? Yep, Vice Chair. Other Vice Chair.
Question for DOE. With HTSB's testimony, which really is to just prevent unintended consequences, prior to the conclusion of an investigation, is the DOE supportive of the offered amendment, which would basically have them surrender their license and then be reported to the national database, which I believe the purpose would be to prevent them from gaining employment in other states should they move or a private employer. And so, well, one, how do you feel about that? And two, is that possible that it would prevent them from gaining employment for surrendering their license versus revoking their license?
I am not sure. I would actually, yes, if that allows them to not be hired at another school, that's really our concern. Our concern is we don't want someone who's a bad actor moving from a school here in Hawaii potentially to a mainland school or vice versa, but really from a school in Hawaii to somewhere in the mainland and be able to teach somewhere else. So if that does prevent that from happening, we would be open to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With serving that purpose, then, do we have a existing database in place that would kind of provide, I guess, be able to share that information with employers that they're kind of on basically a no-hire list?
Why, thank you. Is that like a softball? So we do have a bill moving through the legislature now. It has a do not harm registry that we're
right.
trying to create. That would be ideal. That is something we are looking to do so that it would not just include public schools and include private schools and charter schools as well. And the way the bill is moving, also early education. So that would be ideal. That would be a list that would then be available to anyone who is trying to hire people that would be interacting with kids at an educational level. And so that would be something we'd be fully supportive of. I don't have the bill memorized, I apologize, but that is something moving through that we'd be fully supportive of.
Right. And that one would cover Hawaii as a state, but this bill would cover national.
This one, yes. And
Okay.
this bill honestly does not necessarily benefit Hawaii as much. It's really just making sure these individuals, if they try to move to another state, would not be able to teach in those a mainland school.
Mahalo.
Members, any other questions? Teacher Standards Board, can you follow up on that? If they surrender their license and they're reported as surrendering rather than revoking the license, is that an impediment is that going to prevent them from getting hired?
Well, then we would report it to the National Association, the NASDAQ, National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification. And then that does go out nationally. The way that private schools, what I understand is they have to do a $500 enrollment fee to be able to get access to that list, which that's pretty low compared to other things. and then they can be a part of that list too and registry.
is the-
And then they'd refer that list, and then they wouldn't hire them.
So in your mind, revocation and surrender are equivalent in that database?
Maybe not exactly equivalent, but it would prevent them from being
Does
hired.
it allow you to put an explanation about why that license was surrendered?
Yes, there's a place to put
So it's not just
why
a
they surrendered.
checkbox, there's a kind of a commentary.
I can double check on that, but
Allowed.
I'm pretty sure. Let me double check though and get back to you.
Okay.
Because I know we
mandatory-
put the reason. There's been revocations for other reasons, and I know that we're allowed to put that reason. So surrender, I got to double check on it.
Okay. It kind of seems like we're splitting hairs a little bit. Revocation versus mandatory surrender, that it almost seems like the same thing. I mean, I would think that the same due process arguments would apply. Has anyone run this by AGs?
Well, currently, when someone has a license surrendered, they're agreeing to that, right? The surrender.
not when
But
it's
if they're
mandatory.
revoked it, if they revoke it, that is saying before a pendency, like pendency. That's the whole problem. That word is before an investigation is complete.
Right.
And so we want to allow them, because there have been allegations made against individuals that were unfounded, and the investigation found that they were innocent.
Understandable,
So,
but mandatory surrender to me is revocation. In the same, I mean, like I said, I think we're splitting hairs here.
I think it's to encourage them to stay within the department and wait till the investigation is finished.
But if they stay within the department during the investigation, if we pass this bill as is, it still wouldn't be revoked, right? So it's the same thing.
Unless the DOE has the power to put them on leave, as said, while the investigation is in process, which puts the child out of harm's way. So we just want to wait for the final result,
I understand,
due process and all that.
That's reasonable. I think that in terms of due process, it seems to be the same thing when the surrender is mandatory. But DOE, you said you indicated you had AG's opinion. Could you let me know? Or let us know?
So it's an administrative package bill, so the attorney generals do vet the bill. So this has been vetted by the attorney general's office.
So mandatory revocation is okay with AGs?
I don't know what, the way the
Your
bill
bill.
is correct. The way the bill is currently written is okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, I have one more question for teacher standard. Oh, I'm sorry, this is DOE. Because it's the investigation itself, which you folks do, right?
Sure.
How often, so in Teacher Standard Board's testimony, they said that you can, even if they leave, even if they retire or whatever, the investigations can still continue. How often is that the case, though, where it will continue?
So to be frank, that is something that the investigations are often done at the school level. It is difficult. Principals do have a lot on their plate in addition to everything that's going on. I don't have the exact numbers. I do know that not all of these investigations are carried out just because once a person leaves and leaves the school system for that principal, they do have other responsibilities that they are also burdened with, and so investigations are not always completed.
Yeah, and I sympathize with them because once the person leaves, it's very difficult to continue the investigation just because the person's not there to interview or ask questions.
That's right.
But that's got to be a high priority for principals, right? If something egregious happens, to continue the investigation.
And that is why I hope with this bill that would then either require this person to stay so that the investigation will continue, or it will say if you're going to leave, it's the same as being terminated. So that will hopefully close that loop, provide a little respite to some of our principals with a lot of responsibilities already, and then we could also make sure these individuals are not allowed to teach elsewhere.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's move on. HB 2401 relating to workers' compensation. We have one testimony, DOE, in support.
Chairs, Vice Chairs, members of the committee, I'm Tammy Chun, Deputy Superintendent, testifying in support of this bill. This is to extend workers' compensation coverage to students who have just graduated and are continuing in their internship or work-based learning program in the summer following graduation that is not currently covered by the workers' compensation language that covers our students. And so that would extend the coverage to that group. We have had one student incident of workers' compensation claim in the last 5 years, and so students as a group have not had many claims. So happy to answer any questions. But the intent is to allow students to continue the experience that they from their high school program that would make them more employable post-graduation.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions on this? Okay, seeing none, let's move on. And just an FYI, we're going to be DMing on the joint bills, and then we'll reconvene for the rest of them. So this is the last joint. Last one up for the joint part of the agenda, HB 2258, relating to workers' compensation. First up, we have Deherd in opposition.
Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. My name is Brenna Hashimoto. I'm the director of the Department of Human Resources Development. While we appreciate the intent of this bill, we must respectfully oppose it simply because DHER does not oversee Department of Education employees. They're considered a separate jurisdiction in terms of personnel by statute, and so they have their own policies and procedures and jurisdiction to manage their own operations. So it wouldn't be feasible for DHER to take on the management of their workers' compensation claims. Additionally, we're concerned about the additional resources that would be required to transfer that many FTE. I believe they have about 20 positions and employees who manage their workers' compensation claims now. I'm available for any other questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next up, DOE with comments.
Morning, Ken Kakisak with the Department of Education. We do stand on our testimony just with comments.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Yeah, I've just one for DOE, or and maybe DHER too. We'll see. It seems like there's a great difficulty in just the administrative burden that this places upon DOE and DHER as well. Have you considered getting outside help for this? That's not part of the state, getting like a HEMIC or some other organization to handle the administrative or maybe portions of the administrative work?
That is a great question. I'm not prepared to answer that one. I don't know have we looked at other at this point. So no, that's not something we've considered at this point, but we can take it back and look at that.
Okay, is it even legal? I have no idea. I'm really throwing this out there.
I don't know. We'd have to check on that, and we can get back to you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, please get back to me on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, let's briefly recess for decision-making on the measures that we've already heard. Recess. Reconvening the Joint Committee on Labor and Government Operations and the Committee on Education. It is still February 8th, 2024, in conference room 309. We're just going to be voting on the joint bills now, and then we'll move on to we'll take a brief recess, let free the Committee on Education, then we'll move on our agenda. First up, we've got HB 1827 relating to healthcare workforce development. Chair's recommendation is to do some technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style, and to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Members, LGO members, any comments? Do any?
EDN. Questions, comments, concerns?
Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. LGO members, voting on House Bill 1827. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Capella?
Aye.
Representative Martinez is excused. Representative Sayama, likewise excused. Representative Tam?
Aye.
And Representative Alcos.
Aye.
Thank you, members. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
EDN members, same recommendation.
Members voting on House Bill 1827, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendment. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Capella?
Aye.
Representative Martin? Excused. Representative Martinez? Excused. Representative Mariyoshi?
Aye.
Representative Mizuno?
Aye.
Representative Peruso? Excused. Representative Quinlan? Excused. Representative Todd? Excused. Representative Garcia?
Aye.
Chair chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you.
Oh, no, actually, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. It's not a concern. Okay, moving on to HB 2397 relating to Department of Education procurement. Chair's recommendation is to put a $500,000 cap on this, whereas for the procurement exemption, I invite DOE to propose another cap, though, since this one is relatively arbitrary, but we didn't get a number out of testimony. To be fair, I was putting them on the spot, so hopefully in your next testimony, you can provide a number for us. Tech amendments for clarity, consistency, and style, and defecting the date to July 1st, 3000. Members, any comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. LGO members, voting on House Bill 2397. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representative Martinez and Sayama, who will be excused for the duration of this joint decision-making. Any members voting with reservations or nay? Seeing none, Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members.
EDN, same recommendation.
Okay, voting on House Bill 2397, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendment. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye, noting the excused absences of Representative Martin, Martinez, Peruso, Quinlan, and Todd. Any members wishing to vote with reservation? Any members wishing to vote no? Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to HB 2400 relating to education. Chair's recommendation is to do tech amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style, and to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Members, any comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. LGO members, voting on House Bill 2400, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting with reservations or nay? Seeing none, all members vote aye. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members.
EDN, same recommendation. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 2400, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. For this agenda and the remaining items, noting the excused absences of Rep. Martin, Martinez, Peruso, Quinlan, and Todd. Any members wishing to vote with reservation? Reservations for Rep. Garcia. Any other members? Any members wishing to vote no? Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to HB 2401 relating to workers' compensation. Great bill. Chair's recommendation is to pass or to amend with technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style, defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Members, any comments? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. LGO members, voting on House Bill 2401, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting with reservations or nay? Seeing none, Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you.
EDN, same recommendation.
Members voting on House Bill 2401, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Any members wishing to vote with reservation? Any members wishing to vote no? Chair recommendations adopted.
Okay, let's move on to HB 2258 relating to workers' compensation. Members, I am waiting for DOE to get back to me with a little more information, so with your indulgence, I'd like to keep this moving along for now. Defecting the date to July 1st, 3,000. Members, any comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. LGO members voting on House Bill 2258. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting with reservations or nay? Seeing none, Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a brief recess.
Same
Oh,
recommendation.
sorry.
EDN. Vice Chair.
Okay, members voting on House Bill 2258, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Any members wishing to vote with reservation? Any members wishing to vote no? No vote. No vote for Rep. Garcia. Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a brief recess. Recess. Reconvening the Joint Committee on Labor and Government Operations and the Committee on Education. It is still February 8th in Conference Room 309. Next up on the agenda, we have HB 2235 relating to non-general funds. First up, we've got Department of Labor and Industrial Relations in support.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, and committee members. Jade Butay for Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. We stand on our testimony in support, except we prepare the boiler and elevator revolving fund remain revolving fund pursuant to Act 186 to 2018. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Next up, Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Yes, good morning, Chair, members of the committees. This is Jade McMillan on behalf of Tom Yamachika for the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on our written comments submitted for the measure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Yeah, members, any questions? I just have one for DLIR. Why the Boilermaker and Elevator revolving fund? Why keep that separate?
So we don't, basically to make sure we maintain the self-sufficiency and we don't need to request for general fund, because if it becomes a special fund, then we get a 5% general services assessment.
But why that one and not the other one? I mean, what's so special about that one? I guess, is it some unique situation?
That was that was from the auditor.
Okay.
That was their recommendation.
Was to keep that one separate?
For us, we would want to keep it revolving fund.
The auditor wanted, but why did the auditor think it should?
Because they think it's more of a special fund than a revolving fund. But for us to, like I said, so we don't have to pay that 5% assessment of general services from, budget and finance, we want to keep it a revolving fund.
So it's just a funding mechanism for you that's the disagreement, or is it the nature of the revolving fund itself?
Well, they don't think it meets the criteria for a, revolving fund.
Okay.
But we're, for us, we're more on we're looking at from the, that 5%, assessment.
Do you agree with them that it doesn't meet the criteria for a revolving fund?
Well, if you look at the definition, I think it should be a special fund, but if there's a way you can, include us in one of the, the funds that don't have to pay that 5% for special funds, then we're okay with that too.
Do you have any opinion, Louis? Okay. No, I'm curious. Do you have any thoughts on it? I just don't know enough, I think.
I think when it comes to the issues of the classifications of types of non-general funds, there is a very distinctive difference between a revolving fund versus a special fund. Like in the case that Director Butai identified, the boiler special fund collects fees. A revolving fund, in many ways, it collects revenue. A good example of a revolving fund would be like the Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority, where they're going out, they're doing loans, it's coming back in, and it's going back out again. In this particular case, the boiler special fund is collecting fees that's going in to pay the operations of that particular division. So it does meet the criteria of a special fund, and not necessarily one of a revolving fund. With regards to the issue of not being assessed the 5% surcharge, right now it doesn't get assessed the 5% surcharge, if I'm not mistaken, because it is a revolving fund. I would like to take a look in terms of if it was a special fund, should it be applied? Should the 5% be applied? Because there are administrative costs associated with actually having these special funds in the state's treasury.
You want to go? Oh, Louis, maybe you guys could submit testimony on this bill next time. Or, I mean, not to criticize you, but just a curiosity of mine for the next committee. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember when I was, at DOT, when we had so many we had so many projects. And one of the ways we can, augment our funding was if we could remove that 5%, assessment of general services, then we could do more project. But, when we met with BNF, they told us, it has to be done by statute that that you get exempt from that 5%.
Okay. Thank you both. I think I'm probably going to leave it the way it is for now, but if you would like it exempted, I think maybe BNF can come in with testimony later to suggest language for you to maybe avoid that 5% charge. Yeah. So I think it's reasonable to a reasonable avenue to pursue, maybe just not right now since we don't have any time to work on it in the hearing. Members, any other questions? Okay, let's move on to HB 1588, relating to the Labor Education Advisory Council. First up, we've got Attorney General with comments.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Attorney General Candice Park. We've pointed out the Article 10, Section 6 Hawaii State Constitution concern in our testimony, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have DLIR in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. We stand on our testimony in support of the intent, but we defer to the University of Hawaii. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, HSTA in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Laverne Moore, speaking on behalf of Osatui, President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. We support House Bill 1588. HSTA is one of a number of unions who serve on the Labor Education Advisory Council, where discussions take place about current events in the labor movement, as well as progress on labor education being offered through the center. Hawaii has a long history of union formation, and thanks to the legislature in 1969 that passed the collective bargaining law, public employees in Hawaii have the right to organize. And HST was the first union that went on strike. And we didn't go on strike for salary. We had a good contract, and we had automatic step movement. We went on strike for working conditions. And the HST asked for your support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, University of Hawaii in support.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, members of the committee. My name is Alan Rosenfeld. I'm the Associate Vice President for Academic Programs and Policy at the University of Hawaii. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this bill relating to the Labor Education Advisory Council. The university recognizes that both the Labor Education Advisory Council and the Center for Labor Education Research housed at West Oahu both were established with a clear statewide mission to support the union movement across the state, and we therefore agree that it's appropriate that the LEAC, the Advisory Council, reports directly or advises also the President in addition to the West Oahu Chancellor. Other than that, we stand on a written testimony and I'm available for comments or for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. University of Hawaii Professional Assembly, UPA, in support.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. UHPA stands on the written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testifiers for this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the last item on the agenda, HB 1908, relating to public employee compensation. First up, we have BNF in opposition.
Chair, Louis Oliveri from the Department of Budget and Finance, Vice Chair, good morning. Just to reiterate, the Department of Budget and Finance is opposition into this issue is primarily one related to the state's financial plan and where we are. I think any modern organization should be working off on an accrual-based expenditure pattern where we are paying people for the work that is being serviced. But where it stands right now, if we were to implement such a payroll lag this year, it would result in a $172 million hit to the financial plan in FY25. Given some of the things that are happening right now and some of the large bills that the state is incurring with regards to certain events that have happened in the past year, it would be very difficult for us to manage the financial plan with such a large impact to it. So with that, again, thank you very much for the opportunity to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dags with comments.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, members of the committee, Muling Silman, Deputy Comptroller. We stand on our written testimony as submitted with comments. And our accounting administrator, Lydia Nash, is here should you have questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, UPW in support.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Kamakana Kaimaloa, Government Affairs Manager, UPW, United Public Workers. We stand on our written testimony in support. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Next up, HGEA in support.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nui Sebas with HGEA. We stand on our written testimony in support. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay. Members, any questions? Yep, Vice Chair.
How did you know my question was for you, Director?
When
I can certainly appreciate the challenge with our current fiscal situation, in light of the Maui wildfires and everything else. Do you ever anticipate a time where the administration will actually make this part of the financial plan? Heading into the last biennium, we did have a $2 billion surplus where we could have fit this into.
I agree. I think that there could be opportunities in the future to fix it within the financial plan. My suggestion also, and this is probably more from a technical aspect, is that once we get also a new financial management system, which we're working on right now, that we can get better information with regards to predictive payroll, as well as coordination between our financial system as well as our HR systems. I mean, it would represent an opportune time to actually implement something like this. So, like I said, I think any modern organization should be paying for services that are rendered, and the lag that exists right now, which was established back in 1997, actually, and it was done for budgetary purposes. Again, that it's been something that's been in existence for 25 years right now. So to make that change is probably something that's due. It's just a matter of timing and then the resources and the equipment that we have to make that really effective.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I mean, just because something has been a certain way for 25 years doesn't mean it has to be like that forever, but I appreciate you sharing your perspective. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll recess for decision-making. Recess. Reconvening, first up we have three bills for DM. First we have HB 2235 relating to non-general funds. We're going to be deferring decision-making on this bill until February 13th, 2024 to allow BNF and DLIR to try to think of some kind of language for the boiler and elevator special fund or revolving fund or whatever you guys want to call it. Okay, moving on to HB 1588 relating to the Labor Education Advisory Council. Chair's recommendation is to simply defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Members, any comments? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1588. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Capella?
Aye.
Representative Martinez is excused, as is Representative Sayama. Representative Tam?
Aye.
And Representative Alcos also excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1908 relating to public employee compensation. Chair's recommendation is to simply defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Members, any comments? Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1908, the Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting the excused absences of Representatives Martinez, Sayama, and Alcos. Anyone voting with reservations or nay? Seeing none, all members vote aye. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. We are adjourned.